I'm ready to dive into it.
Me too. I've got my wine.
And my coffee.
Let's do this.
Cheers.
Buckle up, Buttercup, because this is going to be a long ride. And speaking is related to your listening comprehension too. So if you are failing in listening comprehension, if you don't understand well, then that makes your speaking, your instant production, even harder.
I want to mention that in my head, my accent is perfect and I'm not making any mistakes. Yeah, but it's all in my head. So
In Alex's head, he is an American.
yeah.
Welcome back to American Baguette with French Mustard. I am Ava.
And I'm Alex, the French master.
I'm the American Baguette, and he is the French Dijon mustard.
Oh yeah, from Dijon.
You know, maybe this is a good time to explain a little bit about the name, Alex, because I have a favorite mustard, which is a typical American mustard, which is like a bright yellow mustard. And the brand is actually called French's.
Yes. And this is not French at all.
But we also realized that the French version of French's mustard has sugar in it. And so Alex tried it and he said, this is disgusting. And I was like, why? He said, oh, because it's sweet. And then I was like, but my French's mustard is not sweet. So they even changed the formula for the French so that you all would hate it. Actually, it doesn't make sense. But
yeah, but it doesn't make sense that French people buy this, you know, when you have mustard from Dijon in France.
Oh, is Dijon a region?
No, it's a city.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't even know that.
I just thought in Burgundy.
In Burgundy. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes, I see. Which is better than Bordeaux.
Yeah. I don't want to make, some French fighting, about the wine. I prefer Burgundy wine, but Bordeaux is also good.
Well, we're actually talking about mustard here anyway. So.
Yeah.
But welcome back, everyone. We're so happy to join all of you for a new topic. Today, we're going to talk about why you understand English but can't speak it.
Interesting topic for today, because I guess we all, as English learner, experience it. Like the words, but words won't come out.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I already know the answer, but I think it's a combination about the practice. It's most about the practice, I guess. The most you practice, you're practicing, and the most you will effectively speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all about the active passive vocab we discussed in a previous podcast. I don't remember which one. I guess it's the first one.
2 podcasts ago. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I guess.
Exactly. Yes. Well, we will dive into this and cover the topic thoroughly today. But before that, we have kind of a new section. So here I added from our listeners. We had quite an interesting comment this week on our previous podcast. Our previous podcast was about why are Americans so confusing? And this listener replied this. So they said, Americans are Native Americans. The rest of you are from Europe or other places. What false pride you have to call yourself another nation in which you are only citizens of? What pride to pretend you are something you are not? I thought that this was an interesting but a bit of an uneducated comment, because I believe that this listener is confusing a bit of indigenous identity versus national identity. So for one thing, I do have European roots. On my mom's side, we are Norwegians, but I was born in the United States of America. So I'm curious what this listener wants me to call myself. In Spanish, I would call myself estadounidense, which is kind of like United Statesian, but that's actually not really a term in English. And if I did call myself a United Statesian, I could get in trouble with the Mexicans, because a lot of people are not aware, but the name of the country of Mexico is the United States of Mexico. Estados Unidos Mexicanos. So if I call myself a United Statesian, the Mexicans could also be coming for me. So one thing to consider is that we do have the continents, right? We have the Americas. We have North America, Central America, South America that goes from Canada to Argentina. Now, every single one of these countries is part of the Americas, but only one of them has America in the actual name, the United States of America. So, linguistically speaking, what people understand as Americans is of or relating to the United States of America. So, I understand that there are the Native Americans, which are the indigenous people that, were there first. But if we use the same logic, then Australians can't call themselves Australians if they're not Indigenous Australians, right? So
Yeah.
my question is, what should I call myself? So leave a comment if I should not call myself an American because I was born in the United States of America. So if I can't call myself an American, I can't call myself a United Statesian. Do I call myself the? I don't know. Like, what can I call myself, Alex?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to call you. I don't have any clue.
Exactly. Because the thing is that I do have European roots. On my mom's side, I know that I'm Norwegian, but I wasn't born in Norway. So I don't think the Norwegians would accept me
No,
either.
I guess no.
So if I go around saying I'm Norwegian, I can't speak the language. So this would also cause problems. So I understand that some topics can be a bit delicate, but I think that universally speaking, we understand American to be of or relating to the United States of America. So for the simplicity of speech, I will continue to call myself an American.
Yeah.
But please leave your comments what you guys think about this topic. So moving on, let's start with our topic here. Why you understand English but can't speak it. So this is something I hear all the time in my classes. My students say, I understand everything, but I can't say anything. Maybe they feel a bit frozen. So this is one of the most common problems for learners, and it's completely normal. Alex, do you ever have this feeling still, or maybe you had it in the past?
Yes, I had it, and I guess it's because also the fact that we understand, but we don't want to take the time to speak, Like when you have like A1 or A2 level, you have to speak with all the vocab you have, even if you have only 30 words or something like that. You have to speak and actually practice it. Because most of the time, people are just focusing on listening, like TV shows, and they understand a lot of things, but they never try to reuse some vocabs and speak it out loud, you know. And I guess it's the main problem.
So I think some of this has to do with nervousness too, because sometimes we get nervous, even if we have a small amount of vocab. Sometimes none of that even can come up. But let's talk a little bit more about passive versus active, which is something that we have discussed in previous podcasts. But it's really common that you can understand more than you can say. So we talked about this in our vocab versus fluency podcast, but essentially you have passive vocabulary, which is what you can recognize, but you don't necessarily have enough of the active vocabulary. That means what you can use. It's ready to go. So this means that our understanding can be faster than speaking. So for example, you hear it and you get it, meaning you understand it, but when you're saying it, your brain kind of freezes. So this is also typical though, because if you think back to when you were a kid, I don't know if any of you can remember this, but in your first language, you were often able to understand more complex things than maybe you could talk about. Like maybe you're listening in on the adult conversations at a dinner party and you could kind of understand what's going on, but it didn't mean that you could participate in that conversation as a kid because you really didn't have the life experience or the vocab to chime in.
Mm.
Did you ever have any experiences like this as a kid, Alex?
As a kid, I don't remember. It's kind of far, but
He's so old. It was a long time ago.
yeah,
Just kidding. We're the same age.
I don't want to say my age.
It's
Uh,
fine. We won't tell the listeners. We're both 15.
but I don't remember as a kid. But in English, it happens so often. It happens so often that you are listening some people, you understand it, but you can't say anything because, as I said previously, you you just have normally to take time to speak. Even if you build your sentence, it makes like 3 minutes to build it. Just do it.
Mm-hmm. I'm just taking notes.
Yeah, I know.
As all the listeners know, I take notes on the mistakes Alex makes throughout our podcast. Yes, but that's also part of it because maybe because you have your passive vocab, you're kind of like trying to dig it out of a dusty box in your brain in order to build your sentence. But by that point, sometimes the conversation has already moved on.
Yeah.
And so then you just don't say anything because now it would be awkward. So this is totally normal, but we're kind of just painting a picture of situations that language learners go through. But what I want to connect to you is that this is something that happens with your first language too. It's just that this happens when you're a kid because you had to learn your first language also.
Yeah, that's true.
And, you were learning new vocab through school and through life experiences. But because it's your first language, you're not analyzing it the same way as you would your second or third language.
Mm.
Okay, so the thing is, Alex, your brain needs time. So speaking is a real-time skill. So our listening skill is passive. Okay, we just have to absorb and process and comprehend. But speaking is an instant production. So you really don't have time to be thinking too much. So your brain is translating, building sentences, and speaking all at one time. It's, a multifaceted process. But the most common area that I help students on is their speaking because there are two parts where we need to produce the language. One is writing, and the other is speaking. Thumbs up. It's my MacBook. But for speaking, it is instant. When you're writing, you typically have some more time to process
Mm.
and edit. And so it is a bit different. And speaking is related to your listening comprehension too. So if you are failing in listening comprehension, if you don't understand well, then that makes your speaking, your instant production, even harder. So those two parts go hand in hand. But because it is a real-time skill, this is something that we have to practice. And it's normal that this is the last part. Because also think about again when you were a child, when you were a
Mm.
baby. For example, at what age do babies start speaking, Alex?
Really depending about the baby. Mine start speaking at 2 years old, if I remember well.
Okay. Yeah, maybe like around a year they start making some like blah blah blah
Yeah, there
sounds.
is the sound,
Uh,
but yeah,
mm-hmm,
they start listening before that. They understand what you're
mm-hmm,
saying perfectly, but yeah, they start speaking later.
mm-hmm. Exactly. But during even during the pregnancy when the baby is in utero, as we say,
Mm.
babies can actually hear what's going
Yeah.
on in their environment. So that's why they say you should like, listen to music. I've even seen like moms put headphones on their bellies. But supposedly the babies are hearing things even at that point. But then, in the first year, 2 years, the baby is just absorbing
Mm.
the language. So
Exactly.
they
Yeah.
hear everything, even if they can't understand all of it. And then they start with individual sounds and then words, and then they make some really broken and funny sentences. But I want the listeners to try to compare that to their language learning process, because when we start a new language, especially as an adult, we kind of are like babies. We're like infants again, and we kind of start with the same way. So that's why doing lots of passive listening is really important, because you need to let your brain hear lots of the language. And you're going to start with first, a little bit of vocab, and then you can start forming sentences. Now, this can go a bit faster because your brain is already developed as an adult. You're not a baby. But, it is kind of the same process in a way. And so we need to replicate some of that same process in our language learning. So, were there any times that you felt like an English baby, Alex?
When I had to speak, in front of people, like you have some French colleagues and some American colleagues, and you have to speak, in front of everyone, and you feel like a baby.
Who's this big baby speaking?
Yeah, because you don't want to be judged by by people when you're speaking. But this is actually the trap, because
Ooh.
if you're not practicing, you can be better. And
yes.
So I felt like a baby, but it was okay at the end.
You're like, I'm okay with being a baby. Well, you have to be a baby in order to become a toddler, and then from there you can grow. So,
Yeah.
If you are a beginner, then you know that next step. But we can't be skipping any steps. We still have to go through the process, and we have to actually speak a bit like a baby in order to speak like a toddler, in order to speak like a kid, in order to speak like a teenager, in order to speak like an adult. So it's a process, but I think the key there is that you must make mistakes in order to improve. You can't just jump from zero to perfection.
Yeah.
And we have to be okay with that part of the process.
Yeah, but
all right. So essentially, the problem though is the fear. Fear blocks you. So this is normal, but we're all afraid of making mistakes. So you want to be correct, and so you stop speaking. You overthink every sentence, and you also compare yourself to natives. I have a lot of students that say, I just want to speak like a native speaker. And so the perfection, or the pursuit of perfection, basically turns into being silent. I can really relate to this because, I didn't speak very much probably the first year I lived in Guatemala, because I didn't like making mistakes. I didn't like feeling like a Spanish speaking baby. So I had a big fear of mistakes. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and so that was a hard process for me, but I had to overcome it in order to improve. So I basically just had to ignore my ego and just try to talk to people and not care what they think, or not focus on what people think. It's really the only way that you can improve.
And I guess you can become like a native, even if you're practicing since 20 years, you will still have your accent and a lot of stuff like that.
Well, I mean, sometimes people will make comments that I think are meant to be a compliment, but it's not what you want to hear. Like, someone was like, "Oh, I love your accent in Spanish." And it's like, ugh, what accent? And it's like, I don't want to have an accent. I want to sound like a native speaker when I speak Spanish, but some of that is that we can't always hear ourselves. So for my students that are working on pronunciation practice and accent reduction, it's a pretty tedious process, but you have to train your ear and also your mouth if you want to improve your pronunciation. It's not all up here. And that's actually the really hard part, is that some of language is actually a physical process too. And we forget that. We think it's just writing verb conjugations and vocab lists. That's what we think learning a language is. But a lot of it is actually a physical process. Like, your brain sees a letter and it tells your mouth how to formulate that sound with your tongue and your mouth and your jaw. And so oftentimes that signal is incorrect. So, for example, a very common incorrect pronunciation is like the TH.
Yes.
Because in English it should be, well, there's two. It can be or it can be, right?
Yeah.
like 3, or it could be this, for
Yeah.
example. So, but the simple cheater way of doing this is to make like an S sound and just say, s, like for
Yeah.
example, something, something
Yeah.
instead
I
of
know this one.
something. Uh-huh. So, that's the thing. Part of pronunciation and sounding like a native is doing the hard work of training your actual mouth and also training your ear. So, if listeners are wanting to improve their pronunciation, they need to be doing a lot of practice with recording themselves, which no one seems to want to do. When I suggest it, they're like, ugh, I don't want to speak and record myself and then listen to myself. But you have to be able to hear how you actually sound because we don't hear how we sound. Our voice is rattling around inside our own heads. So, what you guys hear my voice as is not how I hear my voice.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to add that you have to record yourself, on this kind of application where you can have, some AI translating, those, like
Mm-hmm.
notes on Android. And this is quite cool because you can speak,
Mm.
and after it, you can see if the translation is okay or not, And it really depends about your
Mm-hmm.
pronunciation. And I remember that I had to train a lot about the TH pronunciation. I remember my old English teacher when I was at middle school who said,
Uh-huh.
"Put your tongues between your teeth."
Uh-huh.
Yes. So
Exactly.
I was like training the yeah, and
Uh-huh.
I was trying to say on those notes apps, to say some sentences with a lot of th, and it
Mm.
was like a challenge for me. So yeah, it took me some time, but it was it.
Yes, for sure. But it is a it's a process. But when students say, "Oh, I want to reduce my accent," it's like, "Buckle up, buttercup, because this is going to be a long ride." You know?
Yeah.
Most of the time, people are not really ready for what that involves. And what I always tell my students is as long as you're understood, that's probably enough because unless you are an actor, actress, or journalist, your accent is not so important.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we don't want to always be trying to improve, but um, probably sounding like a native speaker isn't really the goal in most cases. And most of the time, students should probably focus their time more on enriching their vocabulary and improving their grammar, anyways, because you can sound like a native speaker, but if you're making a whole bunch of confusing mistakes, then you know, what does it
Uh,
matter?
your camera
Oh
is
no, it's
frozen
frozen
too.
again.
Yeah.
Why is it doing that?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
It will
Because
be a
it's my
terrible
iPhone.
nightmare to video edit
I'm
that.
sorry.
It's not your fault. It's also mine.
I don't know what's going on. Okay, well, we're still recording, right? So
Yeah.
hopefully it's going to stay connected. Okay, so let's move on to this part. So the reality is that you don't practice speaking enough. So I think we often confuse input and output, and we need to remember that input is not output.
Yeah.
So we can be reading books and watching movies and watching Netflix and listening to music and all of these things. But watching and listening is not enough. It is great. It's great to have input because you're giving your brain a lot of passive information that
Mm.
it can process and use. But if you never try to use it, then it's never going to move from your passive to active vocabulary, for example. But you're also not going to get that real time practice to practice the instant speaking that you need. So you need to practice real speaking, and speaking is a muscle. So just like your pronunciation is this physical process, you also need to give your mouth the practice to,
Yeah.
make those sounds and to just get in the habit and the flow. So if you don't use it, you can't build it, or as we say in the gym, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Your first gym reference.
of today. Probably the only one. I did plan more gym references. But the gym is always important, guys. But you can think about having English conversations as your English gym. You need to do that. And hopefully you do it daily.
Yeah, but
Do you,
why
what?
why our listeners would have, an English gym?
It's just a metaphor, Alex. It's
Oh,
not a real gym, but the purpose is that you need to train your body, but you also need to train your brain and your mouth. If you
oh,
want to improve your English, you need to practice it every day.
thank you, Sensei.
You're welcome. So, do you have anything to add to this idea of input versus output, Alex?
Mm, no, I just want to emphasize that practicing is mandatory. And I already
Oh,
gave that tip on the previous podcast. It was, vocabulary versus fluency. That even
mm-hmm.
if you are alone, you have to practice. Try to speak out loud. Try to regard yourself. Um, just try. Even if it takes you like 5 minutes to build a little sentence, just do it. And
Right.
if you do that daily, in a daily basis, in a week you will improve a lot.
Absolutely. But I think that that's true of anything because it's not like if you spend like one whole day doing a ton of English homework and practice, and then you do nothing for the next 7, 10 days, like, that's not really how the brain works.
Mm,
I'm not saying that it's not worthwhile, but it's coming back day after day. It's
mm.
consistency. If you want another gym reference, Alex, it's
Yes, I want it.
showing up to the gym and
Yeah,
doing a kind of crappy workout is better than not doing one at all. So just
yeah,
showing up and doing something every day, that consistency is what's going to help you get there. Not
exactly.
going to the gym and like killing yourself one day and then you're so sore the next day that you don't go for like the rest of the week. Basically, you're just hurting yourself. But it'd be
Yeah,
better to go and have like a light workout every single day and have that consistency, have the habit, make it part of your day, make it part of your routine. This is what makes your brain say, oh, this is relevant, this is important. Let's keep this in the active part.
yeah. And doing too much, like in a week, probably you will be disgusted, for the next ones. Like you have done too much work, and
Hmm.
you're disgusted about it, and you will just stop.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that that's also important. I think that there's an expression that says, slow and steady wins the race.
Mm, good one.
Hmm. I think that that's a horse metaphor, maybe like a horse racing metaphor. But the idea is if you can just keep like a steady pace, that's how you win the race, not going on a really fast sprint and then you wear yourself out and then you can't even finish. You just like
Yeah,
fall over.
I love it.
So you love it. Okay. Well, if any of you have watched this week's idioms, we also had another horse idiom. Um,
Yeah.
do you remember which one it was, Alex?
Yeah, it's beating a dead horse. If you remember.
Yes, indeed. Yes, beating a dead horse, which means to not let something go. So I'd say like, stop beating a dead horse, Alex. But I just reference this because we have daily idioms for you guys because we want you to always be enriching your vocabulary and expressions, adding it to your word banks. So make sure to like and subscribe so you can also see those short videos in
Yeah.
between the podcasts that we release. Okay, so let's go to some practical tips for language learners. I always want to give you guys some things that you can use right away after thinking about this really important topic. So, how to start speaking more. So, one really important thing is to speak before you feel ready. We have that
Mm,
expression, fake it till you make it. It's kind of true, but oftentimes we're waiting for the right moment. But Sometimes we just need to like walk up to that person and start the conversation and um, just try. The worst that can happen is that you make a mistake.
Yeah, you're right. And that's what I do, with my son, who is also learning English, actually. And sometimes we're just talking in English and he's just trying to make some sentences. Even if sometimes it took him like 5 minutes to build his sentence. It's okay. And the more he practiced, and I really feel that he has improved, the fact that we are talking English sometimes in the morning, on the evening, really depending. So, yes, you have to start practicing before being confident.
Yes, and actually, if we make a mistake, then that shows us what we need to correct. It's like for my students that do their writing homework.
Yeah, I really feel ashamed, but I'm not your student anymore, so
I'm gonna call Alex out here. He never did any writing homework.
No, I've done the first one. The first one I've done.
He did one writing homework out of like 150. But
I wanted to impress my teacher for the first one, I was like, okay.
He's like, who cares? But sometimes my students will send me their writing homework, and as all of you know, I like to spend the first few minutes of the lesson reviewing it if they did it. And it's such a great opportunity for us to see how you are formulating your sentences. And sometimes my students say, like, oh, I'm sorry, there's so many mistakes. But I see it as great. I'm glad that there are mistakes because that can show us where we can improve. And what's really cool is oftentimes we'll see that you have multiple mistakes that are the same. So in a way, it's like even if you have like errors all over the writing, a lot of times you can identify like 2 or 3 main things that you're repeatedly doing. So then it's like, oh, if I just fix that, then a third of the writing is better. So I think you have to make mistakes in order to learn. Like that's the only way that you can learn. So it's actually, it's great. And I think it's important to use simple sentences. Don't try to be perfect. Like, easy does it.
Easy does it.
Another idiom, but we need to like slow down with trying to be fancy and impress people because what really impresses people at the end of the day is that they understand you.
Yeah.
But if you're having like a hodgepodge sentence that doesn't make any sense, they're confused, not impressed at all. So, using simple sentences, I think, is the best way to go. And then when you're ready, you can start making it more complex.
Yeah.
As Alex mentioned, practice out loud, not just in your head. In your head is also okay, but you need to get your mouth involved. This is a physical activity. You need to be speaking English.
Yeah, and I want to mention that in my head, my accent is perfect and I'm not making any mistakes. Yeah, but it's all in my head. So
in Alex's head, he is an American.
Yeah. You just revealed the truth.
Shout out to our listener, huh?
You just revealed the truth about me. I'm a French with an American inside of my head.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so something else you can do is to repeat phrases that you hear. This is also called shadowing. This is something that you can do at home with your smartphone. So, for example, if you hear a sentence that you just like, especially you want this to be from a native speaker, especially if you want to practice their pronunciation. But if you hear a phrase that you like, record it, then record yourself saying it, and then compare the two. This is a great way to help train your ear to hear yourself. And this will help you over time be able to improve your accent because sometimes the issue is that you can't hear that you have an accent.
Yeah.
Or you can't hear that you have bad pronunciation. So shadowing is a really cool exercise. Also, feel free to ask follow-up questions in conversations. We touched on this a little bit actually in our last podcast about why Americans are so confusing. But if you don't understand, like if someone really wants to get together for coffee, for example, or if you just didn't understand what someone said, it's okay to ask follow-up questions. Like you could just say like, "Oh, what do you mean?" This is a
Yeah.
great way to not say like, "Can you repeat that?"
Mm.
It's a good not letting them know that you didn't understand, but you can say like, "Oh, like what do you mean?" But don't
Yeah.
say like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
Tone is also important, which we're going to talk about in our next podcast, which we'll talk about how to be more polite in English. But tone is king. So you can say like, "Oh, like what do you mean?" Or "Tell me more about that." This is like a sneaky way of getting the person to kind of repeat what it is that they said that you didn't understand. Or you can also say like, "Oh, can you repeat that?" Or "Could you repeat that?"
I
So remember
always
the
use it.
focus is, oh,
Yes,
really?
yes,
Which
with
one?
you. What do you mean?
Oh,
When I'm not
uh-huh.
totally sure
I didn't
that I
even.
understood, I just used it today with you, like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh, I wasn't totally sure about, the meaning.
Look at that. I thought I was being tricky, but the trickster has been tricked.
Yeah. So trickster really tricked again.
Exactly. Foiled again. That's like old English kind of, but
Yeah, but
um
it's a good way to use it, like
mhm.
it's not like I don't understand, and you're not feeling like a fool when you say that.
Yes. This is such a good tip then for listeners. So just say, "Oh, like what do you mean?" Or you could also say, "Oh, can tell me more about that."
Yeah.
And then
But
hopefully you can grasp it. Uh-huh.
when I feel that like when you say what do you mean, it's like the ball is in the court of the other people. Like, okay,
Uh-huh.
I didn't understand you, but the ball is in your court. It's not like I don't understand, it's not me. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you're not enough precise or something like that. And yeah,
Yeah,
this is just my
exactly.
my my thought.
No, it's good. And we're going to also talk about that in our next podcast about how to be more polite because when you don't understand something, if you're just like, huh? Or what? It makes the other person feel like it's their fault, like they didn't
Mm,
speak clearly. And maybe they didn't speak clearly. But, um, one thing about communication skills is that being liked is always going to be more important than being right,
mm,
and you want to earn people's favor. You want them to like you. And this is just how the world works. I'm not trying to be manipulative here, but that's how it is. If you need things from people, they're more likely to do it for you if they like you. So you need
mm,
people to like you in this world, in business and in life. And so if you make people feel like they didn't speak clearly or they're dumb, and when you're the one that didn't understand, then this is not just it's just not going to benefit you. So saying
mm.
like, "Huh? What?" It not only sounds rude, but it also is subliminally putting the blame on the other person.
Mm.
Whereas if you say like, "Oh, what do you mean?" It just shows curiosity, which makes the person feel important. So, managing how the other person feels in a conversation is really important, not just for
Yeah.
language learners, but just for general communication skills. So focus on communication and not perfection. And I believe we also touched on this in another podcast about how when we're focused on the other person and not so focused on ourselves, communication is going to flow further. So empathy is actually also really important.
Yeah. You're right.
Okay, so your challenge, listeners, or can we call you our little baguettes?
Oh yeah.
So next time that you speak English, try not to translate. So don't translate everything in your head. Remember, we don't want to find the translation. We always want to find the interpretation. Um, you know, so often we directly translate things, especially if there's like a similar tense in the target language as our native language, but it's not always actually how you'd say it in
Yeah.
the other language. So remember, we always want to find the interpretation, not the translation. So it's not how is this translated, but it's like how do I say this idea in the other language? And also try not to overthink. Get it out there. If the person doesn't understand, they're going to ask you a follow-up question. You can ask them follow-up questions. In the end, you and the other person or people are in it together to try to understand each other. You know?
Yeah. And I also want to mention that you can see that, guys, in the review time that I've made, sometimes some mistakes or some, yeah, I know, and some French ways to say something. So
Yes, we're all guilty of doing this, but we can try to maybe reduce the amount
yeah,
of direct translation that we're doing. So you can say things like I think or I mean or for example, just keep talking even if it's not perfect. And remember, fluency is not perfection. Fluency is understanding and being understood. So if you accomplish that, mission accomplished. Okay, so that is your challenge. Let's move on to Alex's favorite part of our podcast. It is review time.
Alex is on the grill.
Yes, I'm going to barbecue Alex now.
Yeah, it's like I'm passing the test.
Well, I think there are fewer mistakes this time, but let's discuss some of the mistakes that Alex made. Okay, so you said it's a combination about.
Of.
Of, very good. It should
Yeah.
be, it's a combination of this and that. Very good. Okay, you also said use some vocabs.
Yeah, vocabulary is not plural. I've made the same mistake
Exactly.
on the previous podcast, and I just remembered it.
Yes, you have. Yeah, vocab or vocabulary is a non-count noun. So we're just going to say use some vocab.
So, as you can
Singular.
see, guys, I remembered it, but it wasn't my passive vocab, that fact. So that's why
Exactly.
I've made the mistake again.
So you said you are listening some people.
Yeah, listening to. And I've made a short about
Listening
it.
to some people. Yes, this is a repeated mistake, but that's okay. It often takes many, many times of correction to really get it to stick because we have also kind of a muscle memory of how to say things.
Yeah.
So, okay, another sentence you said, it makes 3 minutes to build it.
It made. It made. No. Yeah, it's past. No. No, it makes.
It's actually about your verb choice.
Yeah. It takes.
It takes. Yes, it
Yeah.
takes 3 minutes to build it. You're referring to building sentences.
Yeah.
Okay, another one you said, depending about.
On. Depending
on. Yes, it's always depending on. You also said, what did I write here?
Yeah. I love that face.
Yeah. I'm like, the thing is, I'm writing very quickly. Sometimes I don't understand my own handwriting.
Some kind of hieroglyph.
Well, you said something like, it took me some time.
Yeah, it took. Yeah, I had an S and there was no S.
It took me some time. But later you're talking about your son and his English classes, and you said it took him.
Yeah, I know. When I said it, I knew that I made the same mistake twice.
Oh no.
I knew
we
it.
can even be aware of it, but we still make the same mistakes because you have a habit. You have the muscle memory of making that mistake. So
yeah, but I'll try to fix it.
Yes, the thing is your brain's like, oh, this feels right, even though it's wrong.
Yeah, sometimes I made some mistake like this, and I know instantly that it was a mistake. But you can't correct it. I will not stop saying something and say, "Oh, let's correct me." It took.
Exactly. Okay, another one you said, in the daily basis.
I'm afraid of the wrong buzzer.
Oh no.
I want to say on the daily basis. Yeah.
Yes. But we probably should also say on a daily basis because if you say on the daily basis, it's like, what is the referring to? Remember, the is the definitive article.
But I wanted to show my TH pronunciation. So
Oh, he's like, let me say the.
Yeah, the. Please, the.
Yeah. Show everybody my the. Look at my pronunciation. It's perfect. Okay, the last one is you said will be disgusted.
Uh, will be. Yeah, I don't know. Clueless.
I'm trying to remember the context of this one.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I
Uh,
think it's like disgusted versus disgusting. But
yeah.
since I also don't remember the context of why I wrote this one, actually.
Yeah. And doing too much, like in a week, probably you will be disgusted, for the next one. Yeah, when you were trying to repeat yourself.
Exactly. This is sometimes a problem too. If you don't have the full context, it could be technically correct. But for example, I think what maybe we want to say is like something would be disgusting, like the thing is disgusting,
Yeah.
and therefore you are disgusted by it. So it's
Yeah.
always that question of the ed versus the ing form.
Yeah, but I guess you were right. But
Of
probably
course.
on post-production I will post, the moment where I said it, just to emphasize
Yeah,
if there is the mistake or not.
exactly. And I have to take better notes, but in the flow of conversation, I'm trying to scribble things down, and that's why sometimes I don't even understand my my own writing.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I need to practice more of my writing. Well, that is the end of the review time. I think it wasn't so bad, but we did see some repeated mistakes that Alex has
Yeah.
made in previous podcasts.
Yeah, I'm a bad
So,
student. That's why, guys.
well, it's because he never does his writing homework.
Yeah. Don't say that to everybody, please.
I'm sorry to call you out, but people need to know the truth.
Don't mess with me.
Oh, don't worry, Alex is very far away, so he can't come find me. Okay. Well, in our next episode, we have a really cool topic about how to be more polite in English. This is also a really common topic for my students and for our listeners. So, you may ask, why do I sound kind of rude in
Hmm.
English when that's not your intention? So, next time we're going to talk about this, how to be more polite in English. But thank you for joining us today. It was so fun to talk about this topic, and hopefully, you guys learned some really cool tips of how you can be speaking more every day,
Yeah.
and really feeling your fluency improving. So stay tuned for more insights, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you, bye, guys. Thanks
See you.
to like
Bye.
and subscribe.